Good evening and welcome. Tonight we'll be going over the history and geography of Portugal. Portugal, as you can see, is a part of the Iberian Peninsula, which consists of Spain and Portugal. Therefore, Portugal only borders one country, and that is Spain. But Portugal is more just than this piece of the peninsula. It has two archipelagos of islands that belong to it. So I'm going to do some clever maneuvering of this camera and try to show you in my big atlas. So let me do that, and then we'll go over its history. We'll flip through this book. But let me go like this for a second. All right, let me shimmy this over to show you the Asaurus Islands. Ta-da! There we go. All right. That's about as good as I can get it. So the Azores, you can see, there we go, are a series of tiny little islands here. They are volcanic, with Pico having the highest point in not just the Azores, but then technically all of Portugal. And they are very beautiful, very rocky, very volcanic islands. And the same goes for the next island. I gotta flip to another page in my big atlas though to show it to you. So let me go like this. And let me slide this down to show you a sideways view of Madeira. Turn your head or screen or whatever to look at it, I guess. But this is the main island of Madeira, and there's a bunch of other smaller islands that are part of it. But they're also volcanic, very rocky, and all those wonderful little volcanic island things. They are out in the Atlantic Ocean, and just because I'm most likely not going to fit it into history, let me explain that once Portugal started to explore the world, they found these islands and they were uninhabited, so they claimed them and inhabited them. And they still belong to Portugal to this day, so they were never really like a colony or anything. They were just a part of Portugal and are still a part of Portugal today. So let's look at the mainland. The country is pretty much divided into three different sections. So let's start up in the north here. We have the Minho River. I've been practicing my Portuguese. Apologies if I mess things up, and feel free to correct me in the comments if you can speak Portuguese better than me. So the Minho River makes up this top border here. It borders the area of Spain known as Galicia up here to the north. And this northern part is very, very mountainous. You can see lots of very big mountains pretty much dominating the entire landscape. The sort of northern part of Portugal ends down here with the river Douro, which flows out to the Atlantic via the city of Porto, or Oporto, which is how Portugal gets its name, and is also where port wine comes from, hence port wine. It's a beautiful city. Then we enter this central part of Portugal, which has an interesting landscape. It also has big mountains, kind of a lot higher than the ones over here. Especially right here, these are the Serra da Estrela, and the highest point is called Mount Torre, right here. And the rest of it is sort of just, besides the coast here, this beautiful, beautiful coastline, you have more like the plain sort of farmland. And it is bordered, I guess, the central part by the Tagus River, which flows out to here and flows past the capital city of Lisbon right here out into the ocean. And then we have this southern part, which is called the Alentejo because this is the Taijo River in Portuguese, so it's the south of the Taijo. And this area is really where you get into the farmland, the like lots of plains and lots of vineyards and various farms, and it's fairly hilly there. It does get a little mountainous toward the bottom, but nothing like up here, as you can see. This bottom coastal area here is known as the Algarve, which I've seen a lot of Madeline McCann documentaries, and they all say Algarve, so I assume that's like the British English pronunciation, but I think in actual Portuguese it's just Algarve. So this area is very, very beachy. This is like the paradise resort area of Portugal, since this is the Mediterranean Sea right here, and it's very beautiful. So this is where a lot of people go on vacation. And the sort of southern river is the Guadiana River, which just cuts in right there. And let's see, other major cities would be Beja. I'm just looking at the map. There's Sintra, and of course Porto I mentioned. Coimbra, I believe it's pronounced. Braga is another big one. Just various places where important things have happened in its history and are major centers today. So let's go into the history of Portugal. It's a really interesting one. So there was an early Celtic culture in what's now Portugal and all across the Iberian Peninsula, with their own very distinct Celtic ways of life. Oh, I'm wobbling the camera. I have moved it way too much. Oh gosh, okay. Sorry, camera. There, okay. Apologies for any more wobblings. It's still very loose from my moving it. So yes, Celtic people living all throughout the Iberian Peninsula. And toward the south, the Phoenicians, aka the Carthaginians, same difference, would have come and settled more in the southern area over here. Most famously, that's how Hannibal Barca would come in and march toward Rome through these areas here. The Romans had taken them over, so he took them back and it became a Carthaginian space. But there would be a huge Roman conquest, a big invasion against the Celts living throughout the peninsula. There were uprisings and battles, all of those things. But most of Portugal, especially up here, became part of the province of Lusitania in 27 BCE and was under Roman control until it wasn't. The western half of the Roman Empire, very famously, was overran by barbarians, which is the Roman word for outsiders. So the same happened over here. The 5th century saw the Goth tribe moving in, and Germanic tribes, and most notably the Suebi tribe. But the Visigoths would dominate for quite a while until they didn't. In 726, the Umayyad Caliphate came up from Africa and invaded the Iberian Peninsula. And this was an Islamic empire, so Islam was spread throughout the area here in southern Spain, southern Portugal. And they would instill a lot of cultural changes, obviously. Eventually, the Almoravids would come in and take over once the Umayyad Caliphate lost a lot of its power. Still very dominant Muslim force, which in Spain and Portugal they're known as the Moors. A Christian movement called the Reconquista came in to reconquer the land that the Muslims had taken, which they would eventually do down the road. It took a couple hundred years, but it was done. They were successful. And it was in the 1200s that Portugal was officially formed after battling it out with what was Spain back then. It wasn't called Spain. It was various other kingdoms. I believe it was Castile y Leon at that time that they negotiated land from and established the current borders of Portugal and became their own kingdom. And it would do fairly well. The governments on the Iberian Peninsula were strong, but there were lots of other stronger empires throughout Europe, I should say. and the world, but Europe was the main concern until the 15th century. The Prince of Portugal, so the son of the king, right? The king was in charge, but his son, Prince Henry, was really into, I guess, having maritime adventures. So he sponsored a lot of voyagers and paid for a lot of inventions to be developed to help navigate the oceans. And he became known as Prince Henry the Navigator. And because of his fascination and need for exploration, many Portuguese sailors sailed out from Lisbon and discovered all kinds of things. More notable ones would have been Vasco da Gama. The Portuguese first went for the west coast of Africa. Vasco da Gama went all the way down till he reached the bottom cape and sailed around it and realized he could just go straight to India. So that was a very important voyage. There was also Ferdinand Magellan. That was in 1519, where he attempted to circumnavigate the globe, sail all the way around it. He made it to the Philippines before he was killed, but the rest of his crew made it all the way back to Lisbon. So some of his crew managed to circumnavigate the globe, but Magellan did not. So they also were heading out into the Atlantic, and they found Brazil, and they established their colony there in 1500. It was declared part of Portugal. But Spain was also getting in on it. I mean, if you know your navigation history, you know it was Spain that sponsored Christopher Columbus, right? So he was also going out at this time and exploring what was on the other side of the Atlantic. So Portugal and Spain went to the Pope. Well, of course, it's not Spain at this point, but just bear with me. Spain, right? They went to the Pope and were like, okay, so we need to figure something out because we're finding all this land and we need to figure out where exactly who's going to be allowed to claim what, or it's going to be a big mess. So the Pope drew a line on the map and said Portugal gets everything on this half, Spain gets everything on this half. It was known as the Treaty of Torrestias. It was signed in 1494, ratified and revamped a couple of times in the years to come, but essentially the line went sort of straight down Brazil. So the Portuguese concentrated on the eastern Brazil coast and a little bit up north. But since they had this half of the line, they focused a lot on Africa and East Asia. They went for, okay, I'm not going to list like every place the Portuguese went and tried to take over because it's a very long list. But the ones to know would be on the west coast toward the south. They had the colony of Angola, and on the east they had the colony of Mozambique, which I've already covered both countries on my channel. You can learn that history of those countries. It's pretty tumultuous. The port that they landed on in India became a Portuguese port. That was the town of Goa, and among various other little ports there along the Indian coast. They sailed into the islands of Southeast Asia and claimed most of the island of Timor. And they sailed up to China, where they claimed the land known as Macau. They also made contact with the Japanese. They took over parts of the Strait of Hormuz near the Persian Gulf. Various islands along the African coast. Like, it was very extensive. It was a huge empire. But those are the ones to really know. And they became incredibly wealthy from these colonies, profiting off of the natural resource. There was a bit of an issue in their colony of Brazil. However, they figured they could just use the natives as slaves in their various plantations and mines, what have you. But they would run into the Amazon and they would not be able to find them again because it's a very, very thick rainforest. So the Portuguese had the brilliant idea to go to their territories in Africa, kidnap a bunch of people, and send them off to Brazil, which started the transatlantic slave trade. So, yeah, Portugal has acknowledged that they kind of started slavery in the Americas and throughout the world, but that is how it happened. Anyway, moving on. Portugal's becoming more and more wealthy. I'm skipping a lot of political intrigue and things that happened in the kingdom. But important things to know also during this period is in 1755, Lisbon suffered a massive earthquake. I think it's believed now to be like an 8.5 kind of earthquake. Leveled the city, tsunamis, fires, all those horrible things. So thankfully Lisbon had the resources to rebuild. But this was coming in kind of a bad time in its history and kind of an economic downturn, so that didn't really help out at all. In 1807, Napoleon invaded. That's kind of a hindrance. The royal family fled to Brazil to rule from there. They established a new capital in Rio. And were ruling from there until Napoleon got beat up and kicked out of Europe. And apparently the royal family were very reluctant to return to Portugal because they were in Rio, right? Who wants to leave a beautiful paradise like Rio? But there was an outcry in mainland Portugal about it. So most of the family went back. The king went back, but he left his oldest son Pedro over in Brazil to rule things over there. That was in 1821. By 1825, Brazil had declared independence, with Pedro being the new emperor, becoming Pedro I. And it was sort of a joint ruling family between Portugal and Brazil. There was a lot of ties between them because they were the same family. But Portugal lost that massive colony and lost a lot of money with it. Portugal would slowly lose power and influence and money as various parts that they had conquered were conquered by other nations that were far stronger than them. And during the scramble for Africa, they pretty much only got a couple islands, Angola and Mozambique, with like England and the Dutch scrambling for the rest of it and not allowing Portugal to connect their territories in the middle. They're just on the coasts, and the people there weren't too fond of Portuguese control to begin with. The fact that it cracked down even harder was even worse. So times were kind of getting bad in Portugal. That all really culminated in 1908 when the king was assassinated, which led to a revolution in 1910, which established a republic to elect its leaders. But that didn't really take off either. It was still very, very shaky. There were quite a few coups. It led to a man named Antonio de Oliveira Salazar, which I'm sure that's not how you say it. That's how you say it in Spanish. In 1933, creating the Estado Novo, or the New Republic, or the new state, I should say, which was a dictatorship. Total control, all the bells and whistles of a dictatorship, right? That carried on for quite a while, past World War II and everything. The colonies, particularly in Angola and Mozambique, were now ready to fight for their independence. Portugal was not willing to let them go. The colonial wars were fought from 1961 to 1974, also in India, because India was gaining its independence. They're like, give us this place back. And Portugal's like, nope, it's ours. So that went on for quite a while. Portugal was determined not to give up on its colonies, even though in this day and age, most other superpowers were allowing independence for all their other colonies. Portugal did not want to. Until 1974, when there was a revolution that's known as the Carnation Revolution, because the soldiers who participated put carnations in their rifles. It was named after that. That overthrew the Estado Novo, reinstated democracy, and they let their colonies go. So all of their colonies became independent as of 1974. East Timor was a bit iffy because they were trying to give it independence, but Indonesia kept invading. So independence for East Timor was not until, 2002? It took a while. And handing over Macau was kind of an issue, but that happened in 1999. Macau is now a part of China. And for the most part, Portugal has finally had an upswing in its democracy now that they kind of cut ties with its imperial past. Their economy has very much improved. They joined the European Union in 1986, before it was called the European Union. In 1995, they joined the Schengen area, which means anyone part of the area can cross the borders without passports. They became part of the Eurozone in 1999, which means they use the euro currency. And that's just kind of how things have been in Portugal. That's, in a nutshell, in a very brief nutshell, that's the history of Portugal. So let me flip through this book for you and show you some cool pictures. My accent's kind of coming out. I'm trying to suppress it. It's not very ASMR. Look how beautiful. These gorgeous coastal cities. So pretty. There's a political map of Portugal. You can see the Taijo, the Algarve, and all the different nature reserves. There's the Asaurus, Madeira, and that's a little zoomed out view of where it's Portugal. There's Madeira, and there's the Azores. There's a really cool painting. You can see Table Mountain there. So it's Vasco da Gama going around to the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. This is Belem Tower, which King Manuel, I want to say, built it. I believe. I just blanked on the word. Like the part where the river goes out to the ocean in Lisbon, the bay, the entrance to the Tagus River. Okay. Anyway, that was meant to be a lookout for ships or enemies or anything. And there's some modern looking people in a modern city. Beautiful Lisbon, lots of historic areas, very well preserved. Obviously rebuilt after that huge earthquake, right? And of course, enjoying the beach. Looks wonderful. Some gorgeous rocks. I should mention, I don't know if there's pictures, but down on the Mediterranean coast, there's some incredible rock formations and caves, and they're pretty famous. There's a physical map. You can see the mountains and the plains down here. There's this really cool village up in the Australian mountains that have these huge boulders everywhere, and a lot of houses are built into the boulders, like the boulders are part of their walls and things. Oh my gosh, that's a kayaker going down this waterfall. That's very treacherous. Very scary. The point at the end of Europe, at least mainland Europe. Isn't that cool? And some mountains down in the south, very, very windswept mountains. Like how I said the mountains in the south aren't quite as big. It's because you've got those winds blowing and eroding everything. The Algarve Dam, which is actually the largest lake in Portugal. No, it's man-made. It is right here. These men in the Azores, since it's a volcanic island, put their food in the pot and bury it and take it out fully cooked. It's pretty cool. Here's a picture of the earthquake. That must have been terrifying. And this is in the Azores. Isn't it beautiful? They're gorgeous, gorgeous islands. And this is Madeira. Very jungly part, right? Very cool. There's some sheepies in the snow. It's cute. And let's see, this is in Porto. This is the big bridge. And this really cool monastery, I want to say, in Braga was just added to the UNESCO World Heritage List. Oh, how pretty. Look at this pony. Or it's a Soraya horse in the mountains of Portugal. There's some cork trees, which are very, very valuable to the Portuguese. They produce a lot of cork, which you can make into all sorts of things, not just wine bottle toppers. But beautiful lynx or Eurasian lynx. Wildfires are a big issue in Portugal. I know here in 2022, they've had some massive wildfires during the hot season. Just the heat waves are sparking these very flammable trees. Like you saw, the cork trees, they also have lots of eucalyptus. Very flammable trees. So forest fires are a thing in Portugal. Some whale watching in the Azores. Fantastic. Some Portuguese dog breeds. The Australian mountain dog, very cute. I feel like everyone knows the Portuguese water dog. which I've never seen it in white. I've only ever seen like black ones. It's cute. There's a spoonbill in the water. Some fossils. Lots and lots of cool fossil sites in the Iberian Peninsula. And old grain storage. Isn't that cool? This huge castle. It's a Moorish castle, it says, north of Lisbon. Here's an ancient dolmen that a lot of prehistoric people would construct these above tombs and graves. It's weird how dolmens are found like all over the world in this shape. I'm not saying it's an ancient aliens thing. I'm just saying that like it's such a universal shape. Some Roman ruins. This is in Evora. It was a temple to, I believe it was Diana. It's still standing today. The Umayyad Caliphate spread all this way. You can see most of Portugal there. Abd al-Rahman III, who conquered most of what's Portugal today. There's Prince Henry the Navigator. He's looking at some maps. He never actually went out to sea or anything. He just paid for everything. And this is a galleon. Oh, no, a caravel. But that led to the creation of galleons. But it changed navigation forever, using some good sailing technology. Lots of voyages here. So let's see. Which ones do we want to point out? I guess you can see Magellan going all the way around. Vasco da Gama heading to India, among many others. Bartholomew Diaz, who he did Africa. I'm trying to remember which. Actually, it'll show in here. He is light green, so yeah, around Africa here, down to the Cape. This is a cool monument in Lisbon that shows all of the famous explorers from Portugal with Prince Henry at the very tip looking out at the ocean. That's really cool. And this is Portuguese territory by 1800. So you can see Brazil, the Azores, Madeira, Cabo Verde, Sao Tome, there's Angola, Mozambique, Goa, Portuguese Timor, and Macau. And they had a lot more before that, but the British mostly took it. A slave ship diagram, which is devastating, to be honest. Brazilians attaining their independence. I sorry, that was 1822, huh? I said 1825. What happened in 1825? I'm not sure. An event of some kind. This is Lorenzo Marques in what's now Mozambique. It's now the capital, Maputo, but this is what it looked like in the 1900s. It was controlled by the Portuguese. They're celebrating the monarchy being ended in 1910. And, oh dear, someone got in big trouble in part of a coup. Oh dear, yeah, that's kind of big trouble. Here is Salazar, the dictator of Portugal. And let's see, he's on the right. Aristides de Souza Mendes, who was in Lithuania. Where was he? He was, where was he stationed? Oh, in France. Sorry, I'm thinking of a different war hero. He wrote a lot of visas for a lot of Jewish people to go to Portugal, which Salazar was not happy of, and fired him and all that, but now of course he's a hero, saved thousands of lives. This is in the Azores in 1944, kind of showing the dichotomy of World War II along with just farmers being farmers. The museum dedicated to the years of dictatorship and horribleness. This is in an old prison. The Carnation Revolution, see there are carnations there. And celebrating after the revolution. Mario Soares, who was the first president, prime minister of Portugal after the revolution. And this is a beautiful railway station. Protest in 2012, it says. And beautiful station here. All of this blue tile mosaic art is found all over Portugal. It's very, very Portuguese. You'll find it on like houses and churches and everything. The Assembly of the Republic, it says. Very beautiful building. Alright. Antonio Guterres, who became the leader of the EU, I believe, right? And a socialist leader attending a rally in Lisbon before he became prime minister. I'm just reading the caption now. The changing of the guard ceremony. Here's the flag. Let's give it a look. The Portuguese flag features two broad sections of color, with a coat of arms where the colors meet. The smaller portion is bright green and the larger portion is vivid red. The coat of arms features a shield on a gold armillary sphere, a model that shows the circles around the earth, such as the equator. The sphere symbolizes Portugal's history of exploration. Here's Lisbon, the little tram, which there's a picture of one in my atlas too. Let me put pencil down so I can turn these pages a little more easily. Beautiful, beautiful farmlands here. It definitely looks like vineyards. Gorgeous. And let's see, some cork trees there in the distance. Some fishermen with some fish and a resources map. Lots of grapes and olives, as you can see. Oh, this is in the Azores, it says. They're making a cobblestone road. And gorgeous, gorgeous Mediterranean beaches. The Vasco da Gama Bridge in Lisbon. And their money, they use, excuse me, pencil, they use the euro. Move out the way, pencil. There you go. This is Porto. Very fabulous. Population map. You can see mostly everyone lives here along the coast, the Atlantic coast, I should say. Lunar New Year celebrations. Some Chinese Portuguese. A sign in Madeira, which has English there for any tourists coming by. Reading the newspaper and like a pub of some kind, it looks like. They're working hard in school. And this is a graduation tradition in Portugal that university students do when they graduate. Oh wow, look at this. Incredible procession there of Jesus is right there being very finely decorated. Lots of flowers, my goodness. And let's see. Portuguese president here honoring the Muslim community, it says. This is this really gorgeous monastery in Alcobaça. It's really beautiful. And let's see this. What is this place? It's Fatima, right? Is it? Yeah, Fatima. Where these children saw a vision of the Virgin Mary, and many pilgrims go there to commemorate that. The Church of St. Francis in Porto. Isn't that gorgeous? That's absolutely stunning. Yeah, I can't get over that. This is before Easter, but it doesn't say what holiday it is, but it's that whole kind of Lent celebration. And there's Carnival, a pre-Lent celebration. Oh, some really cool modern art here. That's neat. I'm playing some fado music. And, Amelia Rodriguez, a famous singer. It's a really cool museum in Lisbon. Lots of interesting art there. And look at this. It says this painting was lost in the earthquake and was rediscovered in 1882. And let's see, this is Maria Helena Vieira da Silva. And here's more of that beautiful blue tile work. Azulejos. You see it everywhere. Let's see. Luis de Camões. There's his tomb. And Jose Saramago. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Playing some football in the street. And football fans celebrating. And some fancy dressage as well. And there's also lots of surfing in Portugal as well. Some really incredible places to surf along the ocean. A beautiful little town here. Sweet. Cute baby. And look at this. They're playing looks like Duck Duck Goose or something. One of those circle games. Gorgeous mall. It's the Vasco da Gama Mall. And some fish drying out by the water. A big market there. Lots of fruit. And pastel de nata tarts, which is like egg pastry. A very fancy McDonald's in Porto. And delicious, delicious seafood. Yum, 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 yum. This is an Easter procession, it says. And gorgeous traditional jewelry. Playing some drums for a festival. And, oh, they're laying down all the flowers that you see in the procession that we saw in that one picture. Very, very cool. And that's the end of the book. So that's going to be it for me for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a very good night. Good night. Good night.